Okay, let's get started. There's a sign-in sheet if you missed it. Right now I'm going to go over chapter 22. Then I have a brief film clip and an exercise sheet that y'all will work on while I walk around and see your final projects. So, with that said, and don't forget, Cool Spaces is on tonight on PBS at 11. You can get 5 points extra credit if you write me a recap by Saturday. Has to be within 3 days.
It's pretty cool. I liked it.
It is. See, she saw it. I'm not the only one.
Yeah. It's really cool. It really is. They talked about the AT&T new Cowboy Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
It is so state of the art. It is nice. Really nice stuff.
Even if you don't get extra credit, it's worth watching.
Yeah. I'm thinking of changing my major now. I like architecture. I find myself looking at stuff now.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about Chapter 22, Installation of Mechanical and Electrical Services. And this is, it says selecting interior finishes, but you've got to, this is all part of the, like before we talked about wiring and things like that. Now we're going to put in the final mechanical and electrical stuff. So there's logistics involved. Too many chairs. Okay. And you can read that. I'm not going to read it all for you because I want to get through a lot of stuff today. But you should study that. You should know the sequence of installation, which we've talked about before, and on from there. So if you have a roof plan, this points out, number one is space for the service space for the elevator room. That might be on a roof. A lot of times, if you notice, elevators stick up beyond the roof because there's equipment that has to pull it up. Not all elevators have to do that, but a lot do. You also might have, number two, mechanical equipment located on the roof. You need to have access to that. A lot of your air conditioners are up there, exhaust fans and vents and whatnot. Number three is location of vertical shafts below, meaning stairwells that go all the way up. That would be a vertical shaft, so is an elevator. And location of horizontal building expansion joints, which is number four. If you have a large enough building, you have to have an expansion joint to allow for natural movement. And that will go all the way through the roof. Basically what you're doing is slicing all the way from top to bottom, and then you're filling that with, you're covering that with sealant and then some sort of movable piece that will go back and forth and allow the building to breathe and move. Then you have, this was, what you might see on the roof. Then in the middle floors, like anywhere in between the bottom and the top floor, you'll see some of these things again. You have, number one is the vertical shafts. Number two is room on each, rooms that have the vertical shafts. Number three is double columns at the expansion joint. You'll see that right here because remember there's an expansion joint slicing the building in two. So this side of the structure is one and this side of the structure is one. So you have to have a column on each side of the expansion joint. Number four would be horizontal distribution of services. Where's that one? Right there, that might be ductwork or conduits for electrical. And number five is other vertical spaces, shafts, or stairways. So if you look at this picture, and then you go back and you can see some of the stuff on the roof. The elevator, which was right there, right there. I'm just going to go back and forth a little bit. Air conditioning equipment on the roof, and then you've got space for that mechanical there. Oops, went too far. Stairs. So you can just go look, in the elevator overhead over there, and then if you go back to this one, you see the elevator there. So then you get down to the bottom floor, and you still have some of those same elements. Of course, you got the elevator, you got the stairs, you have mechanical, electrical shafts, you got the double columns at the expansion joint, and you have horizontal distribution of services, which isn't shown on this one. So what is the sequence? First, you would finish the interior shafts. This is a picture of an elevator shaft, and you can see the cables. You're looking up. You can see the cables, and that guy standing in one of the doorways there. There's a doorway there. There's a doorway there. You can see the rails along the side. So you need to finish this off. Usually they have to be fire rated, totally enclosed and smoke proof, because the fire and the smoke will travel up through that to the other floor. So they have to be sealed off pretty good. So that has to be finished. Like I said, fire stopping, that's what they're doing there. They're stuffing the insulation type fire stopping in the penetrations. There's a pipe or something here. He's going to stuff that down in there to prevent any smoke or fire from coming up through there. Here's an expansion joint cover. You can see the two sides of the building, side 1 and side 2. Then you have, can't see that. You have a metal frame over the edge. Then you have the joint cover. You've got some sealant, some neoprene, rubber type stuff. And this will all kind of, be able to move and expand back and forth without leaving a gaping hole, is the point. So that will be on every floor and every wall and every ceiling. You can see here there's a picture of a finished one. You see the floor cover has to stay flat for ADA purposes. You can't have more than like a 1/4 or 1/2 inch rise, or a wheelchair would have trouble getting over that, or people would trip. Then there's your wall and there's your ceiling. You can usually disguise them pretty well. Most people don't hardly even notice it. So after the horizontal distribution system is installed, the suspended ceiling is installed. That's what they're doing there. So after they've gotten all the ductwork and the electrical routed to where it needs to be, then they can cover it up with the ceiling. Sometimes there's gypboard ceiling. They're doing an acoustical ceiling there, and the suspended ceiling. That's followed by the framing for the walls. The walls are covered up, and then the floor is last. The reason you do the floor last is because all these tradesmen are walking in and out, and you don't want them to mess up your floor. No matter how hard they try to keep it clean, they'll still mess it up. So you always do the floor last. And if for some reason you have to do it sooner, you cover it up as best you can. So selecting your interior finish systems. The finish system is what you're going to see. You care about the appearance usually, that you want it to be neat and clean. If the sheetrock wasn't on these walls, we see all the studs and the messy wires, and that would be nasty looking. You want it to represent the design well. This is something the architect is very involved in, is selecting the interior finishes, along with sometimes an interior designer or decorator. But the architect is usually ultimately responsible for it. Reflections from interior finish material affect the sense of illumination. This room has a light wall, so it's very bright. If there was dark blue walls in here, it would, even with the same level of lighting, it would seem very dark. The hallway is a darker color. There's not as much light out there, but it's a much more subdued feeling. Flooring and wall finishes can give a sense of affluence and appropriateness to the desired occupancy. This, is pretty generic classroom. You go to a lawyer's office, it's got wood panels and dark and lush carpet and stuff like that. So it can give a very different appearance. Your home has a different appearance just based on the finishes that you choose. You also care about durability and maintenance. Here in a school, we want it to last a long time. It takes a lot of wear and tear. Even if you guys don't mean to destroy things, you do. So, your people are accidentally hitting the walls with things, and a lot of you need to be able to easily clean the floor. That's why they use this is called VCT, vinyl composition tile. It's very easily cleaned up when there's a spill or whatever. We got the laminated countertops, which are easy to clean. You got the walls, which these have a pretty slick finish, so you can probably wipe them down and get the smudges off pretty easily. If you go in bathrooms, you notice that there's tile work. That's easily washed down. It's all waterproof. So you need it to be durable and easy to maintain appropriately for what the building is used for. Acoustics are important. Here we have an acoustical ceiling. What that does is it absorbs any sound that we make, from a lot of it from going into the attic and into the next room. We can't really hear what's going on in there. If we had the door shut, we wouldn't hear what's going on in the hall, because acoustically this room is very tight. One thing that helps with that is this wall probably goes all the way up to the deck, which is the roof, the cement of the roof. One thing I noticed in our offices across the hall, I don't think the walls go up that high. So there's just, the wall maybe goes up 4 inches past the ceiling, and then you have your ceiling, and your wall. So like when Ms. Bennett's on the phone, I can hear exactly what she's saying because the sound jumps over that wall. So I whisper when I'm on the phone. But it's important to pick things that are acoustically appropriate. STC stands for Sound Transmission Class. That's how things are rated. You would specify your STC rating that you want based on how private you want your space. And every building component has an STC rating, so you would look that up in the specifications. Fire criteria is also very, very important, as you might think. You want your finishes have to be fire rated based on your building. This is probably a 1-hour wall out there, so you've got a 5/8 inch Type X gyp board on each side, which makes that a 1-hour wall. It's got metal studs. If it was wood studs, it wouldn't be a 1-hour wall. So mainly wood is only used in residential type applications. There is some wood in here, obviously, but it's very minimal for your cabinetry and stuff. But your structure has to be rated in a public building so that people have the right amount of time to get out before it collapses. That's the purpose of it. It talks about the ratings for fire, class A, B, C, depending again on what you're using the building for. Flammability of materials. Every material in here has a flame spread rating, and you have to have it within certain criteria depending on what the code says. So it just talks about that. More on fire resistance. When you're building a building, you give your plans and your specifications to the building department. And the fire marshal is in charge of making sure everything is fire rated. So he'll review the plans in the beginning before it starts, and then he'll come through different periods of time during construction to make sure you're doing what your plan said. And then he would check the labels on the doors and the materials and make sure that everything is in compliance. And if he doesn't find it that way, then you won't get your certificate of occupancy until you fix it. So it doesn't pay to say one thing and do another, because they'll catch you. And it's all for the safety of the people. We don't want buildings to burn down and collapse on people. So depending, also, I don't know if you remember back sometime this semester when we discussed mechanical, electrical. I think it was this class. I get them all confused. It's all running together now. So, yeah, but mechanical, electrical systems. You've been in restaurants, I'm sure, where you look up and you see the ductwork exposed. Usually like a black ceiling and it's all painted. If you have that kind of system, you have to be very careful and choose a pretty nice-looking system. And you confused me. You threw me off, AJ. Be sure and sign in up here. The workmanship has to be much greater when it's exposed, because you don't want people eating their dinner in the fine restaurant looking up and seeing glue globs and crap like that, dangling off. So it's more expensive to do it that way, but some people like that look. If it's concealed like it is here, it still has to be done right, but it can be a little bit more sloppy. Sometimes you want to be able to change for future use, and this is especially true in like an office building where you rent out spaces to tenants. Tenants come and go in those things all the time, and you want to be able to easily rip out walls or move them and not disturb all of the other stuff. So you need to think about that. In other buildings, like it says, concert halls or churches, it's going to be pretty fixed for a while. So you want things that are not going to be able to be moved. Cost is an important factor. I've said this before. Usually, especially developers of office buildings want it done fast and cheap. They're not really thinking of 30 years down the road, which is, if we're thinking about the environment and all that, we should be thinking about that. We don't want things that we just throw in the junk pile 2 years later. But a lot of times, the bottom dollar is the rule, and so they'll say, "Well, I know this tile will wear out in 2 years, but I can only afford $1 a square foot right now, so that's what we're going to use." But other times, if they're smart, they'll spend a little bit more. Life cycle cost is what I'm talking about when you take into account, because if you spend $1 a square foot on this tile and you have to replace it every 5 years, when you could have spent $2 a square foot on tile and it lasts 10 years or 15, I guess, what's better in the long run. So you want to think about the life cycle cost and the maintenance involved and all that stuff. A lot of times it can be really cheap at first, but it'll cost you over the long haul. Toxic emissions is a big deal. These are boring slides. There's no pictures. So anyway, toxic emissions is the VOC rating. Like everything will have a VOC rating, volatile organic compound. Yeah. So basically they're making sure it doesn't give people headaches by the fumes that it gives off or makes you sick. Some people are very sensitive to those things. So there has to be a certain level not allowed on that. So trends in interior finishes. A lot of times this is talking about modular partitions. In an office building, they're starting to make walls that actually you can move, that are segments. And then you can move around and reconfigure your office space without having to go into major construction. Those are very expensive in the beginning, but then it saves you over the long run because you don't have to rebuild it every time. You just kind of move it. There's changes in heavy finish material toward lighter ones. What this does is with scientific technology, you can get lighter and lighter and stronger finishes. So then your structure doesn't quite have to be so robust and heavy, and you can save money on that. Changing from wet systems to dry systems. I don't know if we've done this yet, but somewhere we talk about wet plaster and gypsum board. Have we talked about that in here? It must be in the future. So, even last year's running together now. Gypsum wallboard is dry, and it's much easier to put up than in the old days. You had to plaster and lather your walls, and it's sloppy and messy. So it's easier to have the drier systems. Shipping and handling is easier, etc. We also want to think more along the sustainability lines. Is it good for the environment? Are we getting the best deal? Is it going to be able to be recycled, etc. Okay, that's the end of the slideshow. Remember, no class Monday. I have a guest lecturer Tuesday at noon. I asked y'all about this about 6 months ago. And you said you would come to lunch on a Tuesday. That's this coming Tuesday, downstairs, in one of those rooms.
How long is it?
It should only be, you only need to be there from 12 to 1. And if you need to leave a little early, that's fine. It's a free lunch for this class, not your buddies. For this class, and anybody in the online class can come. He's not. There's also going to be some architects there because they're getting a CEU for it. And that's who he's really giving the free lunch to. But I begged him to give y'all one too. So how many of you can be there? Tuesday at noon. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. AJ? It'll be an hour, because architects have to go back to work. So you can come.
Are all of our classes expensive?
No, just this one. I'm just talking about this one. Don't try to trick me.
All the ones over here?
No.
Oh, okay.
Do you have a class in?
No, it's like right after. I just want to leave early to get this year.
It's in the building downstairs in one of those 2 rooms in the hall. I can't remember which one. Okay, so don't come Monday because I won't be here, but come Tuesday. And it's kind of an off topic, but it's still, building construction, so I don't care. It'll be fun. He's going to talk about dirt and the construction and the strength qualities in dirt. So it'll be, as you move on, that's something you'll need to understand later on in structures and stuff like that. So, all right, now I want to watch a movie, then I'll look at your final projects. Uh-oh, what happened? Let's see.
And this is just a draft, right? Not the final project?
Yes, we're just looking at a draft.